Wow, okay. I don't do a lot of public speaking, but this has to be one of our most attractive audiences so far. Like I said, I don't do a lot of it. I prefer quiet drinks on a bearskin rug, but we're going to have a great time tonight. So, welcome to Google Island. My name is Daniel, and I am a member of InterTech. We are a coalition of 4 tech companies, Zalando, Google, LinkedIn, and Airbnb. Save the A for last. No harm intended. And we are an informal network for LGBT+ members of the Irish tech community. And our goal, broadly, is to promote diversity and inclusion, and we try to do this by doing 3 things. First of all, we like to have fun. So we promote social networking events, such as gay bingo. We like to get together and have fun and meet each other. Second of all, we try to do good by organizing fundraisers for charities such as Shoutout. More on that later. And last, but definitely not least, we try to do community development for the LGBT+ community by organizing meaningful discussions such as this one. Which brings me to no fats, no femmes. So most of you might have probably seen these statements on some profiles if you're into online dating. You might have even written them yourself on your profiles. No one's judging. We really want to have a non-judgmental, open discussion here tonight about, why might some people write this, or why might some people take issue? The only reason I bring this up is because in informal discussions, one-on-one, with my gay and lesbian, and sometimes straight friends, they exist, many people seem to have some, if not a strong, opinion on these sorts of statements being made on people's profiles. And so the more I talk with people, the more I realize it would be good to move beyond the merely anecdotal, beyond the chit-chat, and try to get to the bottom of this, and try to get some varied opinions on this, and try to facilitate a public discussion with all of you. So to this end, we organized for an extremely knowledgeable, highly charismatic, and very well-spoken panel to fly over all the way from London to join us on stage tonight. So please give it up for my lovely panel, David, Vivian, and Riyadh. If you guys would please join me on stage. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
So, let's start at the beginning. Always a good place to start. I would like you guys just to introduce yourselves in a few brief words. So, let's start with David.
Hello. Hello. I'm David Stewart. So I'm from London. I work at 50 Dean Street. I manage 2 services there. 50 Dean Street. Everyone's heard of it, yeah? Yep. 50 Dean Street. Woo! It's the world's best sexual health clinic in the world. It's the sexual well-being centre. So rather than just inviting people to come in when they have an infection and giving them medicine and taking care of it, we've really tried to rebrand it to a sexual well-being centre, particularly for what we call high-risk populations. And we gay boys are very high risk when it comes to things like this. So it's about not just medicating our sex lives, but providing a space where we can talk about sexual well-being. The chemsex clinics is a big part of that. I was part of a film that was made in our clinic about chemsex, which is, again, trying to get to the bottom of the reasons why we might, a lot of our sexual behaviour can be tied up with chems or harm or risk or poor communication. And another one of the services we have is supporting our gay men that come in with the language they use on apps. If you want to reflect on the best sex you want that leads to less risk and more joy and happiness from your sex life, how do you write your profile? How do you manage these online communications and trends? And I think that's why you asked me here tonight. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Vivian.
So my name is Vivian Errington-Barnes, and I work for Her. Has any ladies here tonight who've heard of Her? Yeah. Yes, ladies. So Her is an LGBTQ plus social networking app. We have over 1.3 million users globally in over 55 countries. We are the largest app of its kind and the largest community of women And we're also the fastest growing app made for women by women. So I'm here to talk today about the females.
Hi, Iz. How you doing? I'm Riyadh. I'm Irish, and this is the first time that I've been able to say in a long time, "Hell yeah!" Oh, they don't get it over there. It's such a weight off my shoulder. I'm a YouTuber, a YouTube content creator. I make a lot of LGBT type content, some of it funny, some of it activism, and I am also in the process of making a documentary series with BBC Three. One of the documentaries is specifically about this issue. We're halfway through production, so it's very, very interesting for me to be here and to talk about it. And I'm learning just how bad it is every day that we make this. So that's sort of what I do in my life. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so no fats, no femmes, no blacks, no Asians, no bi, no Trump supporters. Before we even begin, I would just like to, as I mentioned, we want to have this as an open, non-judgmental discussion. So first of all, I would like to get a quick show of hands of who might have ever in their lives written something along the lines of no fats or no femmes or no anything on their profiles, no XYZ need not apply.
Well done, David.
Okay, we seem to have a very sound audience.
People are
tonight.
definitely not being honest.
No worries. We'll warm you up for later. Okay, but so no fats, no femmes. Why might some people take offense at this, David? If I use a dating app and I want to meet bearded, middle-aged, muscular Irishmen because that's my thing, then why?
Is this like Grindr Live, the stage show?
This is what dating
Come and get it.
It's a new Google experiment. But so if I want to meet a specific kind of man or woman, then what's the problem with saying so? Or why should there be an issue with saying so? David?
It's because it hurts people's feelings if you say things the wrong way. Rejections hurt. We've spent a lot of time trying, as gay men, we spent a lot of time trying to avoid rejection. A lot of us were the only gay in the family, the only gay at school, the only gay in the village. There's a lot of rejection there. There's fear of rejection when you're coming out to your parents, whether that's a real fear or not. There's real fears every day when we come out in various different circumstances. Fear of rejection's built into us. I like to think as a community we might have been learning how to reject each other nicely. But of course, technology landed in our laps really suddenly about 10 years ago with a whole set of communication skills. If I want to communicate to you, Daniel, that I'm nervous to take my clothes off with a stranger, that there's things I like in a person and things I don't like. If it's just between you and me, I could probably do that by looking at your face and facial expressions, but if I've got a whole world of Grindr viewers or members looking as I isolate it down to it's like ordering a pizza. If you want a pizza and you're ordering a pizza, you tell the pizza maker what you want on the pizza. If you tell the pizza maker what you don't want on the pizza, you're going to get a pretty fucked up kind of pizza. So I think we should be learning to communicate what we do want, not what we don't want, because at the end of the day, it hurts people's feelings. At another end of the day, it can be racist and bigoted and exclusionary and painful. And we can be a better community than that, I believe.
Do you mind if I just add to that, Daniel?
Please.
So I was just going to say, I think we've spent such a long time as a community being marginalised and being made to feel insecure. And it's funny that in this minority that we're further kind of perpetuating that feeling of insecurity within our own ranks. And I see that a huge amount in the lesbian scene as well. I don't know if you girls will agree, but when you go out, it's so cliquey, and it's about who you know, and it's not inclusive and welcoming. So I think it's really important.
I agree. I think for me, it's the difference between where do you find preference versus prejudice? Where's that line?
Yeah.
And then, you know, as a young gay guy, when I first stumbled across Grindr, I think I was like 16, 17, I remember flicking through it in my bed thinking, this is great. And then, you know, you happen across someone's profile and it says, you know, no blacks, no Asians, no fatties or whatever. And then you're so impressionable at that age. You're like a sponge. And you start to think that this is okay. This is the way of things.
It sets the standard.
Yeah. And thankfully, I don't know if it was because of how I was brought up by my parents and that they're, you know, there's a lot of morals in my house, that I never did that. And I'd be very ashamed if I did even once put something like that on my profile. But I do know that now, you see when I was 16, that was a long time ago. But now, it's even more so a thing than it was then. I think back then, a guy here or a guy there might just say it. And I remember when I first saw a profile that said, not into black dudes, it took me by surprise. I was like, are you allowed to say that? I don't think you are.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to do anything about it because I don't care. I'm just going to move on to the next twink that I fancy. You know? And I did.
Who is just one swipe away.
Yeah, right. Well, not on Grindr. And then I think what needs to be done is that whether you're 16 or 26 or 66 or whatever, if you see it, call it out. Not in an aggressive, mean, judgy sort of a way. Just ask the question, why did you have that in your profile? Especially if they're the first one to contact you. So say, okay, let's do like a role play. I think you're gorgeous. and I
Role play's pretty realistic.
He is very, it's the German thing. And I send you a message saying, hey, what's up, sexy? And on my profile, I have no blacks, no Asians, no fats, no whatever. Instead of communicating with me and being cool about it and ignoring that, it sends such a message to me if you then, you know, call me out. Because I'm trying to win you over. And if the guy that I'm trying to win over is calling me out, I'm very, very unlikely to leave that there in the long term. If that happens over and over again from us, if we say it to these people, they're going to realize that doing this is the opposite of cool. Doing this is the opposite of attainable and attractive. That's what I think.
So in that case, what you're suggesting is that we should be more focused on, you know, community, you know, enforcement or policing, if you will, of community norms, as opposed to some...
Not even policing, see that, because that takes the fun away from the whole idea of online dating. It's just having a dialogue.
Right.
You know, an unwritten rule book. It's kind of, this is actually wrong. This is not okay. And this is okay. You know, it's not taking the joy out of it, I don't think.
That's a very interesting point, because I'm very glad we have Viv here from her. She's, you know, as being involved in one of these platforms. You know, it's, you know, some people call for, you know, just simply stricter community guidelines or stricter profile enforcement. But at the same time, why should it be up to these platforms to take care or to enforce these certain policies, when it should, as Riyadh says, it should actually be up to each and every one of us?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I was going to move on to what we do from the app's perspective. So first of all, I think that before I talk about what we do, I think that we have to be honest about the fact that everybody has a type, right? Like, it's ridiculous to be so politically correct to say that you don't have a type. But I don't think it's about advertising on your profile what you don't like and being exclusionary and saying, I don't like fats or femmes or blacks or whatever it is, right? Where's the line? I think it's more about calling out what you do like. So, for example, we've developed a feature on Her called Mix Her. See what we did there. And basically, you have 4 categories. Little plug here. But you have 4 categories where basically you can pick what kind of gender identity you want to see, what kind of sexual identity. So I'm saying, like, it could be female, it could be non-binary, it could be fluid, you know, it could be queer, whatever. You pick out the type of sexuality you want. It could be bisexual, lesbian, queer, whatever, when they were last online and whether they're single and in a relationship. And you get to select one from each, and then it'll show you profiles. But you're actually pulling out what you do like. You're not saying, I don't like something. And I think what we do from an app perspective, because I think you have to choose what kind of community you want to be, right? Like Twitter had no moderation, and you get proper, what do they call it? Trolling. On Twitter, right? 4chan, Reddit, what I mean? It's absolute madness, because when you get people when they're online, there's no accountability. So people kind of just, like if you really were not into fats or femmes, you might say it on a dating app, but if somebody came up to you who was fat and was like, hey, I kind of fancy you, I want to go out with you, would you be like, no fats? You're not going to do it in real life, right? So what we do, because we choose to be a community that is, we choose to moderate our community to keep a certain standard, we employ moderators who actually work for her, and they go through the feed and they report anything that is transphobic, anything that is racist, anything that's generally prejudiced, and they will profiles will be suspended, and then they will apply to us and say, oh, I don't know why I've been suspended.
But is that moderation on her the exception, not the rule? Knowing other people that work for all other apps, do they do the same thing?
I would love to be able to say I know what Grindr and Scruff and all the rest of them do. All I can say is for her that we do that. And also it's community moderation as well. So if you see a full frontal vagina, you know what I mean? Like, woo! That's the difference with Grindr.
I'm out of pussy.
But yeah, so if you see...
Only with consent.
If you see something that you don't like let's say it's like, you see somebody's that's like fuck all trans people. Can I swear?
Yeah.
Just to check.
Go right ahead.
You're
in Ireland.
Bit late. But let's say you see something that's like fuck all trans people and it's awful, right? Then you could report that, and that would instantly be taken off. So the community has power as well. But I think that even with all the moderators in the world and all the community reporting in the world, it doesn't change the behavior that it keeps happening. And I think it's really important that what Riyadh is saying of like, if somebody comes on to you that has this kind of stuff on their profile, call them out on it and say, this is a turn-off. This is not going to get you, that kind of thing is not going to get you on a date with me. You know what I mean?
And then if they say, oh my God, yeah, what a light bulb moment, I've taken it off, then reward them with dick.
Mark his words.
Treat them like a dog.
I won't be getting the dick involved, but I see
reward them with fanny, whatever. Can I ask you a question?
Literally.
With the moderation, is there like a Bible that her has of what is...
Code of conduct.
Where's the line then?
So we have community guidelines. So when you join the app, you're shown the community guidelines. If you break the community guidelines, we'll remind you of what they are. But it's essentially, it's long, but I could sum it up in saying we are a supportive community. And if there is anything that is spreading hate or making people feel bad or basically being mean, then you will be suspended and your profile won't be renewed and you won't be part of this community. Oh. And we have to reinforce it to keep it like that. And what's actually happened is, I would say the difference between and at some point, whenever I can, I'm going to bring up the difference between Grindr and her, which I was saying to you guys earlier. But I would say the difference between the lesbian community, and I say that to include LGBTQ+, I'm just saying lesbian for ease. But the difference between the lesbian community and the gay male community is that if anybody put on their profile, like, no fats, no butch, they would instantly be reported by, however many members saw them first. It's a completely different culture. It wouldn't be as accepted. And I think that maybe that's because what we found from our research is that the behavioral differences between gay male dating and female dating is that it's much more aesthetics. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. Like,
yeah, we're visual creatures.
It's more visual. Yeah. Whereas women, it's more cognitive. So you wouldn't say something like no fats because it would be, whoa, there would be a lot of backlash.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's a very interesting point you highlight about the differences between gay online behavior and lesbian online behavior there. So I wonder why might it be that gay men are less likely to call out this sort of behavior or less likely to, report these profiles? Why is it that our communication might perhaps be a little more careless?
Abrupt. I have a theory behind this because I feel like I felt it myself. So I think a lot of people in this room will agree. You know, you're in school, and you realize that you're into same-sex people, and you see your classmates kissing each other, doing other things in teenage discos, whatever, and you're always the one that's left out.
The outsider.
Yeah, now that could be for a year, that could be for 2 years, that could be for 5 years, depending on how long it takes for you to come to terms with who you are. But, you know, I remember going to, you know, Wesley Teenage Disco. Remember that one? Yeah. Awful place. And
Must try it
seeing
out.
every single person in my year getting off with someone, bar me, because I just wasn't into girls. And then when I eventually managed to get with a girl or with a guy, I was way late. So now on the other end, now where I'm open and I'm out and I'm comfortable in my own skin, I think with a lot of gay men, there's this idea of catch-up. It's like, oh, well, I lost 2 years at the start. I have no time to waste now. So when you're on a dating app, it's kind of like, okay, come on, sex, yeah, now, okay, cool. What, like, do you top, bottom, like what? You know, I don't know. And then it kind of takes away the old school romance. And what I mean by old school romance is just going, how are you? Or you know, saying,
Fancy a cup of tea.
So
yeah, do you want
romantic.
to go for a drink or whatever? It kind of everything's sped up, and I don't blame us for that. I really don't. I think it's actually society's problem. But I think we in a way can help it by just noticing it and processing it.
So this experience of like delayed maturation, wanting to catch up, is this something that's borne out in your own personal experience as a healthcare professional who deals with gay men's well-being and sexual health and mental health, David?
I think Riyad got it like spot on. I'd expand on it in the sense that I think as a gay male community, we have a really fucked up sense of sexual well-being. I'd like to, that's quite a harsh kind of statement, but I think it's, go back 40 years, yeah? We've had a really tough couple of decades. The AIDS epidemic ravaged us. We've had to fight for gay sexual liberation, actually fight, you know, just for our sex, the sex that happens in saunas between two men, the sex that shamed us in school. We had to fight really hard as communities for decades to get that right. And we're very defensive about it now, and we've almost defined ourselves as sexual beings. At the same time that technology was changing the way we had sex and all this stuff too. During gay rights fights as well, and pride marches were getting bigger. And during all of this time, sex became a currency that we relied on, because being part of a community is so damned important when you've had that childhood experience or that youthful experience, unique to all of us. I mean, not unique for all of us. And we defined ourselves very sexually. It became a culture. I was talking to my colleague earlier about if you buy a sofa, you want it to be practical and beautiful. And at some point, some designer's going to make an awesome sofa that's so fucking gorgeous, it's lost all practical use altogether. And some have argued, not me, other better people than me have argued that our gay sexuality has been designed almost like a sofa through those years while we were trying to fight for it, define it, defend it, create it, define it. We've got our bears and our cubs, and we've got our twinks, and we've got our porn, and we've got our harnesses and our looks and our clones and everything. We've got a beautifully designed, visual, sexual currency that gets us accepted, gets us rejected, it gets you affirmation, it gets you relationships, it gets you affirmed. Our self-esteem and community engagement can be a part of it. Our sexiness is incredibly important to us, and I think we've become that sofa that's almost lost its practicality, and we've lost our authentic sexual selves and what we want. And I think that's being fed into this kind of language, into the way we communicate sexually with other people. I think it's being fed into, even when people are talking to us in clinic about the sex they're having, they're talking about, if it's sober sex, which is rare in our clinic, it might be, they say they had a good sexual experience. They tell us about it. So they're lying in bed, they're worried about feeling ugly in this position, they're worried about pleasing the other person, getting a hard-on. What does the other person want? If they're lying back and getting a blowjob, are they just mindlessly enjoying the sensuality of it? Or are they thinking, what am I supposed to do in reciprocation? What am I supposed to do? What do I do next? What do I look like in this position? Worrying about rejection all the time, and quite often it's because it's with a stranger that they met in a hookup app using weird communication skills. And at the end of that episode, if they don't get rejected or told off or made to feel ugly or useless and the performance went well, they go, I had good sex, yay. And we're like, that wasn't good sex. That was a great performance. Congratulations. You learned this through porn. You learned this through your friends. You learned this through your community. That's not great sex. That's not a community of people that have a good sense of sexual well-being. I know I'm going on too much. I think if I'm expressing it in any kind of logic at all, it leans into why we communicate so poorly to each other with sexual definitions, exclusions, and harshnesses, because it's our currency and it's very important to us.
Can I give a woman's perspective?
Please.
So, I am all for the non-binary. Gender is changing, right? We don't live in the same world that we lived in 10 years ago. Feminine and masculine are very different from your sex of male or female, right? That being said, I think that society, whilst we are progressing where the gender differences are falling away and no longer is the stereotype of like girls like pink and boys like blue, yeah? I agree with that, but I think that there is still some lag in our society. And I think that traditionally, the straight setup is that a man will be the sexual one, and they've got their dad patting them on the back, being like, "Go on, son, you know, like, oh, he's such a tearaway, like, be careful, you know, he'll try and fuck her," essentially, right? And the girl is brought up to be like, "Oh no, I don't even think about sex. I don't want sex, and you'll have to marry me to have it." You know what I mean? And I think that basically the traditional role of a man is trying to have sex as quickly as possible, and the traditional role of a woman is trying to abstain until they've really earned it. You know what I mean? And I think that if you take that kind of, if you're brought up in that kind of way, then when you get two men together, it's like they're both really trying to have sex, and there's no barriers. You know what I mean? It's just like, right, you know, you see them from across the club and you're like, eyes, I'm into it, you're into it, okay, let's do it. You know what I mean? Whereas with girls, it's so much longer. Like, girls are like, lesbian relationships are so much more frigid. It's like, you really have to have
but
this...
you get married after a day and get 10 cats.
Yeah, I know, because it gets so serious. It's like, I really want them to prove themselves. They really need to earn it. And that's why suddenly, like, they are getting married so quickly.
I wish we tried harder to... I agree with everything. I wish we gay men were better at thinking about what we're worth before we give that away. But you can get slapped down for saying something like that in a community setting.
Yeah. No, I completely
I wish my
agree.
patients certainly did care about themselves enough more to say, I'm worth being treated a certain way and I'm going to have these boundaries before this sex happens.
But also, do you find that traditionally, the way that men grow up is it's cool to have sex with a lot of people?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And for women, it's like you're like a slag if you have sex with a lot of people. Now, that's changed radically since I was at school, but there's still a little bit of lag there. And I think that could be potentially contributing. Like, what's it like in your scene if you have slept with a lot of people and you're going on Grindr dates all the time? Is that a good thing, or is that not a good thing anymore? Is that changing?
I don't know. I guess it depends on your circle, doesn't it?
I think it depends what mood the troll on the other end of Grindr is.
Yeah.
You're either really cool and I've got to have you because if everyone else wants to shag you, I want to as well. Or you rejected me, you're a slut, he sleeps with everyone on Grindr.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
That's really harsh what I just said. I think it's ambiguous, yeah.
So David, in your practice as running the well-being program at 5016th Street, what sort of advice or support do you give to men who present to you with these performance anxieties and serious issues about conforming to certain roles?
Just prescribe them Viagra.
Always works.
No, it depends what people are coming in for. A lot of people are coming in because they've got this infection or gonorrhea again, or this or this or this and this, and they're not identifying anything wrong with their sex life at all, which is really worrying. We have guys that come to... One of our clinics is Dean Street Express, and we can have... One nurse will probably see between 40 and 60 men, one after the other, in one day in a busy clinic there. The first guy might come in and said they did a lot of chems, had a lot of sex, had an amazing time, they passed out for a little while, but there was still someone having sex with them. I've got this thing dripping out my penis, can you fix it, please? Oh, and the nurse wants to have all these conversations about, were you conscious when all this was going in 3 days, and are you enjoying a sex life, and are people treating you the way you deserve? But she doesn't have time. And he's like, don't judge me. It happened last month. It'll be happening next week too. Don't judge me or my gay life, please. Just give me my medicine. And they're off. And then the second one comes in, it's the same kind of story. So a lot of the time, it's guys not identifying that there's anything wrong with the sex they're having at all. And with apps, it can be pretty similar too. A lot of guys find that it's the first thing they check when they wake up in the morning is their Grindr messages. And it's tapping into their life a little bit too much. And a lot of people find what we actually do is help people reflect on what do you want from your sex and romantic life? Very broadly. Have you ever thought about it, or are you just horny and acting out? Is it Saturday, you're lonely, you've got an app on the phone, go to town? Or is it putting some thought into what your sexual and emotional needs are? Let's talk about that at length so that you know how to inform your profile, so that your profile says what you're like, reflecting your true vulnerabilities and your sexual and emotional needs. So you're not having to live up to performances all the time. The communication skills within the messages behind will support people to write those things.
But if a guy says that, he is shy and he wants gentle sex and, he wants to be, the little spoon and that's it for the first night, do you think that's going to restrict the amount of action he gets? I think it would.
But does it matter if he gets the right action?
Good, right, exactly.
Yes.
That's the
but
kind
is he going to get any action?
Can we clap that? He wants a pizza that's quite rare. And so rather than excluding all the bits, he's going to say what he wants on his pizza and he'll probably get it, but it might take a bit longer.
Yeah.
That was a really stupid... Thank you for letting me go with that pizza. No, if I say on my profile, and I don't have one because I'm scared of you all, but if I had a profile, it would say I get nervous taking my clothes off with a stranger. It's better if I know someone a bit longer and a bit better. I'm less nervous then, because sometimes I don't always feel attractive, because I'm vulnerable, actually. And I think that my vulnerability is the sexiest thing about me. And one of my boundaries that I have is I don't go to bed with anyone unless they get that my vulnerability is a sexy thing. And if I put that on Grindr, I would get lots of rejections, like butch up dude, and what site do you think you're on? I can handle it. Dude. I'm a robust gay man with great friends and networks that support me emotionally. I access the services I need to. My self-esteem is okay. I can handle rejections, and it's worth it to communicate what I want, and hopefully it leads to the kind of sex and romance that fulfills me rather than wastes me.
Can I just say, I think it's amazing what you just said, because who here in this room would say they kind of feel the same about what he just said, about the vulnerability?
I'm scared you'd all reject me. Did that make me sexy, saying that? No?
We're a loving community here.
No, I think it's honest, saying stuff like you get nervous taking your clothes off and stuff like that, and it's this kind of stuff that makes people more nervous, you know what I mean? Because we are not all, as you've aptly put, oh no, we've only got Barbie over here, but we had Ken.
But even if you're not seen by society as a fat person or as an effeminate guy, when you go onto a profile of someone that you like and you read that, the first thing that happens is you go, oh, am I? Every single time. So you could have looked at one 5 minutes ago, one 2 minutes ago, and one right now, and they're all saying the same thing, and each time you see it, you go, a bit of a quit.
It sets a standard that you compare yourself.
Yeah. And it kind of, it stifles the process of communication and relationship building. Even if it's just a friendship or just a one-night relationship, it still stifles it and it changes it into something else.
So what I'd be curious to know then is, so we've talked a lot about how we as the LGBT community, within that the women and within that the men, interact with each other on these apps. But I wonder, how might this look like to the outside, if you will, to the straight crowd, to those who are not down with this lingo that's going on in these apps. And, you've done this hilarious video that I found very amusing, where you got your mom to read out your Grindr messages. And I imagine you've done this maybe with a few other people as an experiment, or just show them. And what sort of feedback did you get? What sort of responses did you get from, outrage or bewilderment? Or
so that video was the first sort of video that sort of gave me my online career. So I'm thankful for it. But there's parts of that video now, and I watch it, I go, Riyadh, you're a bit of a prick for making that, aren't you? Because not only did I, use my mother, she loved being in the video, but I kind of gave the public the perception of what they think gay online dating is on a platter. So when I was producing that idea and editing it, I was thinking, so what does straight 35-year-old Ben think Grindr is? And I'm going to give him that. So it was, there were some shocking messages in there, quite a lot of them. And I think that the heterosexual viewpoint of gay online dating is just, it's fast, it's wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. onto the next thing. They don't see these little things that go on, these little, I don't know the word, but yeah. I don't know what else to say. It's I don't think they see the full picture. I don't think you can see the full picture unless you're living it, unless you're seeing it every single day, and unless you feel it in your heart that, are these men talking about me? Am I that thing that they don't want?
Am I on the outside?
Yeah.
On the inside?
And even, I am a young white guy. We've been speaking about it in my documentary, is that there is definitely this hierarchy there. And we've spoken to Asian men and black men and men from all over the world, and each person tells us where they think they fit on the hierarchy. And every single time they say that whites are at the very top, and then it's different for each person underneath that. So it's very, very, very complex, and it's not an easy thing to explain to someone that's not living it.
So in that case, what I'd be curious about as well is, so there's this cliche that the gays did everything first, right? We did disco first, we did ecstasy first, we did Kylie and Madonna first, then we did online hookups first, we did chemsex first, and now we've had Tinder for a few years, right? And hookup culture is blossoming and burgeoning in straight culture, if you will. So I wonder, do you think something like this sort of very explicit exclusion might take roots in straight culture as well? Or might the sorts of gender norms that you talked about earlier of, the man is the go-getter, the woman is the passive one, might they sort of prevent these from taking root, if you will?
I think personally, what we're talking about here doesn't happen as much in the lesbian community in terms of it's not quite as obvious. There is a lot of no butch, so like the opposite. It's quite common for it to be absolutely acceptable to say on your profile, like, I'm not interested in butch women. But I think that it's much more prevalent in the gay male dating, and I think until society moves past the point that I was talking about, where you have these kind of, that's the general setup for men, the setup for women, I think that women in the, like for instance, Tinder, so after this debate, I really want to go, and we shared our data with Grindr, but I really want to share our data with Tinder to see this kind of stuff. But I think if a guy put on his profile, like no small tits, you know what I mean, or something like that, I can't imagine it going down well. You know what I mean? Or a woman was like, only big dicks.
But that would be all over the Daily Mail the next day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like the mainstream media, they're all over that. But with us, we're the kind of this underground secret sect. It's like let the gays do what they're doing, Just leave them to us. No one cares, apart from us. And that's why we need to act, because we are the ones that are being affected by it. Mostly negatively. The only person that's winning is the dickhead saying it, because he's getting what he wants, and then he leaves this wake of insecure people behind him.
There's just 20 million dickheads out there.
So many dickheads.
I shagged all of them. No, I think it's I don't think there are dickheads. I think we're all vulnerable, every single one of us. I mean, if you pick, I'm 50 in case I don't look it.
Doesn't look it.
Thanks. So I remember when we first had our phones and we started texting, and when texting was new. Anyone remember that? And we were scared to say, we had to use it, invent words like for drugs, like chems, and because we always felt like we were being watched and going to get caught out for doing something. It was all such a new thing, this online-y stuff. We were quite polite and nervous about being caught, about the words we used. And then when Facebook came around, and that was all about friendships, and it was about being nice and boasting about how good his life was, it was also very polite as well. And then Twitter came. And it was the opposite. It was kind of like bitch, slag off, bitch, vent everything, give birth to trolls. I picture these guys sitting in their bedroom, evil, nasty people with 2 big screens and a can of rusty baked beans, and all they do is sit there and bitch everything. But then if you actually picture it, what it is, it's a lovely 16-year-old guy coming out of that room saying, "Hi, Mum, what's for dinner?" And it's actually really, really nice. That's just the way he behaves there. And then Grindr came about. And we're trying to learn all these new... And Grindr just kind of became the...
How old is Grindr?
10 years, I think.
It's a long time.
Almost exactly. And it's kind of like Twitter all gayed up and on steroids. I don't think the people who are the nasty, perfect people that say no fats, I don't think they're nasty people. I think they've just learnt poor
You don't think any of them are
skills.
nasty?
No, I don't.
You really don't? So if someone says, I've literally read hundreds of these profiles in research, and a lot of them are using...
So convincing.
I'm gonna pretend that didn't happen. And a lot of them are literally using the N-word. No N's, no chinks, no this, no that.
Does Grindr allow you to filter on race?
Sorry?
Does Grindr allow you to filter
I
on
think
race?
does it?
It does, yeah, and so does OkCupid as well.
What? That's an
crazy.
acceptable word on Grindr?
Crazy.
Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not in the drop-down
Okay,
menu.
okay.
No N's. Yeah, imagine. That would make it into Daily Mail.
Bit of bad press for Grindr.
But you know when people write it in their bio, I'm sorry, they're just racist.
I'm a therapist, so I believe people are good. They just learn bad concepts of things, and they learn bad language. And the responsibility, they do not learn by being yelled at on Twitter or being excluded. They learn by being communicated with and educated gently and nicely and lovingly. And that's the therapist in me. And I will never, ever give up on the nastiest person on the planet.
Yeah,
it's my job because they sit in front of me every
they
day.
have to notice that they are nasty.
Yeah, there has to be
Some of
consequences,
them.
but they're not inherently.
And I
is what you're saying.
sympathise and empathise with a population of people that has suddenly learnt to communicate their sexual and emotional needs. One of the most vulnerable and intimate and awkward things that human beings do, so fraught with rejection and so many things. And we're trying to communicate all of that with 140 characters, an avatar, and some emoticons. I empathise with anyone that gets that wrong and fucked up endlessly, and I will endlessly do my best to support and educate and understand people who get it so damned wrong. I don't want to hate them. I want to include them and educate them if I can the right kind of way.
Well, it's very interesting what you guys are describing. So, on one way, you guys are saying that these online platforms like Twitter, where trolling is a fact, that these platforms just enable this behavior, but the users might not be inherently, nasty. They might just have learned this style of communication as being acceptable. Whereas on the other hand, you could argue that they are nasty inherently, that there's 20 million dickheads out there. So how do we reconcile it? Do these platforms enable a behavior, or do they reflect something that's already there?
I think a lot of the apps know what's going on. Well, I'm not talking about your one. I don't know your.
We know it's going on.
Yeah, but sort of turn a bit of a blind eye to it. It's like
It's not. Let me just interject. It's not that we turn a blind eye. It's that we have over 1.3 million users, and it gets to a point where to monitor that kind of stuff, to have it never happen, you would need to literally have like one person looking at one profile. We just don't have the resources, and also it's not. Whilst an app is an enabler, it's endemic in society. You know what I mean? It is, people are writing things that they believe is acceptable, and it's not one person, as you say, it's 20 million dickheads. It's not like Her or Grindr create those dickheads. It's something, that it's a platform for them to communicate that dickhead-ishness that we try and moderate.
But I think that you're moderating probably more than a lot of other apps. It sounds
True.
like,
I like that.
You've got a layer there, a layer of protection that might not be there, in others. I don't know what's going on.
Do you know what it is,
inside
right?
these places, but
The reason why we moderate more is because we believe that basically it's going to be a better experience for our users, and ultimately Grindr is not here to defend itself, but I imagine that the reason why they don't moderate as much as us is because they believe their users will still have a good experience without it, and they'll still stay on the app. Like, we believe if we allow that kind of behavior, people will leave our app and therefore we'll have to shut down. And I think that, what does that say? That says that the community that they're fostering, it's like this kind of lowest common denominator of a transactional, sexual kind of like, right. For instance, finally a time for me to bring up the Grindr research. So we shared our data with Grindr, and the average amount of time between a man on Grindr suggesting a meeting versus a woman on Her suggesting a meeting, with a woman, it's 23 hours and 14 messages. With a man, it's 1 hour and 3 messages, right?
Wow.
And also,
I can top that.
and also, and in terms of the actual like opening messages, we looked at the top 10 opening messages between her and on Grindr. The majority of them were like, "Hi, hello, hola," that kind of thing. And then that carries on down her, but on Grindr it goes to just a picture message. You know what I mean? Or the word sexy. So I think it's a means to an end, really, isn't it? Mm. I mean, if you want to meet somebody who is going to be a potential boyfriend, and again, I don't know, I'm not in your subculture, right? So I don't know. But I would say, would you go on Grindr or would you go on a different app like Scruff or something like that?
Well, I don't know about you guys, but like I have been on Grindr and been on dates through it. I wouldn't go specifically there for it. I'd probably choose another app, but it had happened.
Yeah.
Has anyone here been on a date through Grindr or gotten into a relationship because of Grindr? Yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah.
There's an exception to the rule.
No, but like I think when you have a place where there's a pool of people that actively want to communicate, whatever the purpose is, you're going to build friendships and potential like long-term relationships. But overall, it is going to be
But you did say that if you were seriously looking for a boyfriend, then you would probably go on a different app, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And what does that say? It says that one app is fostering a certain community and another app is fostering another community. So maybe that's saying, right, if you don't like language like this, maybe don't be part of that community and go to a different app. And then maybe if a lot of people do that, maybe that app either changes the way that it works or the other app gets a bigger user base,
So we should vote with our feet, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe, if you don't like it.
Good point.
Because that's an interesting point, something that occurred to me. I've used Grindr and Scruff in my life, and I always find it curious that Grindr has basically 140 characters of space to express yourself. Everything has to tick boxes and metrics, whereas Scruff gives you a few paragraphs of space in various boxes. And again, I feel like, that forces a very different sort of interaction, a target audience, etc. So I guess it's true what you say, that depending on what you're after, who you're looking for, you go on one or the other. What would be interesting is how do we engage users to think about these things, who they might be looking for, and if they're not happy with seeing people writing this, then there's other avenues out there, whether they're apps or meeting in a community group or at a book club.
All of those things, and this specifically is when we can police them. And there have been some of you might have read the articles. There have been, I think it was Scruff that made some new additions. Was it Scruff? To what they would not allow to be spoken. I think the word chems wasn't allowed, and the emoticon for a cloud wasn't allowed to stop crystal meth smoking, stuff like that.
Whoa.
No, there's kind of policing stuff that goes on that's kind of controversial, but it starts with us. It's how we need to identify that we're a vulnerable population, trying to navigate our way through our sex and romantic lives on these things, which didn't come with any instruction booklet at all. And it can be quite harsh, and you need a really robust skill set and self-esteem to navigate your sexual and emotional needs through these apps. You really, really do. Yeah. And so few of us have that. It starts with ourselves, every one of you, being kinder to yourself and to the people you're communicating with. And on a bigger level, thank you, Daniel, for this, because this is the thing I will travel to the ends of the earth to be at, because this is our community coming together to talk about it. A lot of you might go home and be nasty trolls on Grindr and Twitter after all of this, but that's kind of the point. When Donald Trump went on at 3 a.m. in the morning and started being misogynistic and horrible at 3 a.m. With tweets and tweets and tweets, there's a real guy there that did that. It might be the guy, your best friend, that does that on Grindr and treats other people badly, maybe even uses these things. But it might even be you, and you're not a bad person. You just get caught up in this language, complicated thing. And so it does start, charity starts at home, thinking about how we act ourselves. When Daniel asked us at the beginning, does anyone here reserve the right to exclude things that way? We both put our hands up because we're imperfect people that aren't always right. Sometimes I'm a different personality when I'm got my cornflakes and I'm sitting in front of my computer and I forget that there's a face. I got a Twitter message from a journalist today asking me some really nasty, horrific, insulting, intrusive questions. And I was about to fire off back what a bitch she was. I actually caught a glimpse of her little profile picture, and she was 18 and kind of gorgeous and trying to make a career, and just immediately made me empathize with what I was about to communicate. We can all be imperfect and nasty, and we probably are doing it ourselves. So charity begins at home, being kinder, being vigilant and empathizing with the people on the other end of the keyboard.
Yeah. I think as well, it's just checking yourself. Would you say any of this in person, like you said? So like, write it out and read it and go, no, I would never say that in the George on a Saturday night. Delete, 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 delete. and that way, the communication becomes so much more human. Yes, we are on an online platform, but we're still talking to each other with respect and the respect that we deserve.
Beautiful.
Boom.
Here, here.
But I think also it has a lot to do with self-worth, right? Because when I first came out, and I'm sure it's the same on the gay male scene, right? It's like everybody, when they come out, they just want to fit in this community. So you change the way you dress, you start trying to pick up the lingo as fast as possible. You're like
rainbow
revising.
flags fucking everywhere.
Yeah, you're revising like what are the gay films, what are the gay books. I've got to read them all. Who's that gay character? I don't know that character. I've got to watch that TV series, right? So you're trying to fit in with this community. And I think that if you see this kind of language, you're like, okay, cool, I've got to fit in with that. And I think everybody goes through that phase of like first out, getting to grips with it, and then you kind of calm down. You've slept with a few people as well, so you haven't got like raging pink horn. And
I've never heard that.
Pink horn, you know that phase where you've just come out and literally you're like, oh my god, if it's got tits, I'm into it. You know what I'm talking about?
Wow.
You don't even know your type yet. You know what I mean? Like you haven't got a type. You're just like, oh my god, women or men. So, but I think like after you calm down out of that phase, you know who you are, and you know the bits of the community that you identify with, and you know the bits of the community that you think that doesn't reflect me. And I think this comes back to what you were saying about self-worth. You know, when you reach that stage, you get that self-worth. You know what the kind of person you're looking for, and you just wouldn't engage. Like if somebody says like no N-word or whatever, you're like, well, I probably won't message them, and if they message me, I'm probably not going to message them back. So I think, and a lot of self-worth has to do with the fact that, when you're at school, as far as it was for me in England, being cool is about who fancies you, right? And who you can get with. Like, I was popular because guys fancied me, yeah? And I came out a bit later, and a lot of the androgynous girls that I know, /fancy, if any of you are out there, when they were at school, the guys didn't fancy them, right? Because they were androgynous, and it wasn't really understood, and that kind of gender, what do you call that?
Fluidity?
Fluidity, yes. Brilliant. That kind of gender fluidity, it wasn't really understood when you're a kid. It's not like you're in edgy East London, you know what I mean? Like, or, well, anyway. And I think, like, those girls...
I got you.
Hipster Central.
Those girls, they grew up, right? And at 21, suddenly, like, all lesbians fancy them, and they're like big dogs, and like it's all fine. But your confidence is formed in your formative years, yeah. So when you're 14, if you get rejected, it's not the same as if you get rejected when you're 30. You don't get over it in the same way. And I think society in general, for anybody who came out when they were younger in their formative years, society is not as accepting. It's harder, and your confidence gets knocked, and it doesn't get rebuilt in the same way. And I think that this self-worth thing is harder for our generation, and it will be a lot easier for generations after us. So I would hope that this kind of behavior, as self-worth increases, and it's not that big a deal, to be gay when you're, for the next generation, that this kind of behavior levels out, and actually we become more similar to straight dating. Don't know what you think about that. Long one. I went on for a while.
That's a scary proposition. Well, it's what always struck me as very noble, or at least nice about gay dating, is that we don't have millennia of gender relations to contend with that bear down on our shoulders.
Yeah.
We kind of had to make up our own rules because there weren't any. It was all clandestine, it was hidden away. And it's interesting what you pointed out is that the flip side of that is that those norms that might be enforced in straight culture, that, if someone writes no small tits or no small dicks, they'd be torn apart on Tinder. That because we don't have these rules to fall back on, they become more accepted. And we can just say, oh, well, we don't have rules, maybe this is a rule, I guess it's okay. And I guess, coming back to your question, I guess, there could be more benefits to being more like straight dating, but I think vice versa. The straight crowd could also learn a lot from being a bit more fluid about rules, not taking them so strictly. The woman never makes the first move. He always treats her to dinner, etc.
Oh my God, I mean, that was literally the most refreshing thing about when I became lesbian. It's just like all that kind of became. One day I woke up and I was like...
When you joined the cult.
New plan. But it was brilliant because it's like sex, there was no longer this thing of like, oh my God, I got fucked. You know what I mean? It was like we had sex and it was fun. And it does, and like if you did something dirty when you were with a guy, you're like, shit, should I regret that? Whereas with a girl, it's like, it was just messing around. You know what I mean? Nothing so serious. So yeah, I mean, I would say that is like 100% the main plus. But also, can I just play devil's advocate with the whole, all this kind of stuff, right? Now, I don't approve of like no fats and all that kind of, I don't approve of stuff that makes us insecure. But I think like there is a place for apps like Grindr and there's a place for apps like Her. I'm not always in the mood for a relationship. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it is great to have a transactional app out there that you can just be like, right, 1 hour, yes, done. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Just saying. I'm looking at you.
What? Hey, look, I was just in Amsterdam, okay?
Oh, no.
Will I save this one for later?
Yeah.
No, but it's a non-story. I downloaded Grindr and nothing happened. So what I'm trying to say is that not always, it doesn't always work.
Damn.
Not for want of trying. I mean, I was on it for a while.
An hour.
An hour. A good hour.
Yeah. But one other point, because I know you've run out of time, is that I'll go back to the youth thing. Is a lot of these young LGBT kids are going on apps like this, not to find sex, but to find their community for the first time. Because they may not be out to anyone but themselves. That they haven't been to a club before, they haven't been to an LGBT youth organisation like Belong To, they haven't done any of it. So isn't it scary that this is the first thing that they might be seeing, and then that's the thing that they think they've got to fit into? And I think it might even scare some young, shy LGBT into staying in the closet a bit longer because they don't see how they can ever identify with something so harsh. It was like the first time I stumbled across hardcore porn. Hardcore
with some research,
porn.
yeah.
As we all do.
Just for research.
No, literally, I typed in sexy hunk. Like, how innocent is that? And then I got like... Yeah, I know.
I'm so sorry.
We are worlds apart in what we type in.
That's not what I type in now. And the things that I eventually came across, you click through, was like really intense stuff. And at the age of, I would think I was like 14, it was like, what the fuck? I can't deal with this. And it frightened me away from sex for ages because I thought that I had to do that. And it's the same for these apps. When you look at it, this is your example, this is your only example.
I couldn't laugh at any of that because it's quite frightening what you just said. Young people being introduced to those kinds of extreme things.
Because everyone's got a phone. They've all got a phone.
About sex.
God knows what it would be like to be like born in the time of the internet, right?
This is why what you're saying before, Daniel, about is this going to... Gay communities can sort of discover things first. The work that we're doing at 5016 Street in regard to app use and technology and compulsive use of apps and poor self-worth and poor sexual well-being, we're watching how we respond to gay men and how gay men are responding to things like porn, these things, in this fast-changing world because there are 13-year-old young girls out there in school and their school friends are starting to have sex and the boys are encouraging them to. And if there's any parents here of 13-year-old girls, who's the right person to talk to your daughter? Because regardless of the parental settings on an iPad, she's being introduced to sexual awareness much earlier than you wanted to. She's learning skills and communications about how to understand her sexual needs through apps. And it's going to create a generation of older sexually active people, not just gay men, that are struggling with the same kind of poor self-worth that we are. And for us, it's not just a problem, it's a public health concern because it translates into HIV infections that we can't manage even as technologies and clinics and medicines get better and better and better. We're still chasing it up all the time. So it is something quite important, this early experience, the role sex is playing in our lives. We need to look at it. That clock's been freaking me out and I finished exactly on 0.
Yeah.
You legend.
Well done.
There's a clock down here ticking
On that
away.
note, we would now like to open up for questions. And the way we're going to do that in very googly fashion, the microphone, I'm going to throw this at you, and I suck at
awesome.
sports, so I'll probably hit it right at your head. So please, if you have any questions, put your hands up. We have one right there,
Keen bean.
and then we have one over there.
I love this thing.
Whoop.
Is this on? Okay, hey.
Hi.
I'm femme and half Asian, so this is emotional. No, joking. Basically,
You're
I
cute.
guess... Thank you, so are you. I guess from the conversation that I've been listening to, I think a lot of what you guys have been talking about is how you can moderate or even save other people's feelings. I think what we all, like, this is a question for everyone in this room, including you, is why? Why do we actually think that, like, if, for example, I was in Asia and I went on Grindr, would I see no Caucasians? Is that a thing? Like, we need to take ownership, not for not hurting other people's feelings, but actually our own feelings and thoughts. It's not okay. Like, I think there's a lot of racism. Like, there's a lot of prejudice. And I guess the question is, where do you think that stems from? Like, why, for example, if I was on Tinder and I was a girl, would I not see no short hair, no brown hair? Why do why do straight people not feel the need to segregate themselves, but we do?
I was actually going to maybe follow up with a question on this, but like in society where you see like celebrities or athletes, etc., who haven't taken the steps to come out or be open about their sexuality, do you think that plays a part in people who are maybe only now starting to get comfortable with who they are and maybe make these comments like, oh, I'm masculine and I'm not interested in femme guys, etc., because like maybe in the 70s or 80s, like, you know, if you were effeminate, you maybe couldn't hide who you were and you were picked on and maybe bullied because of that. But do you think celebrities or sports role models, etc., are like maybe not doing enough to maybe speak about it and sort of be open about who they are, so that it would encourage people to just accept people for who they are and not maybe make these prejudices and judge people?
So I think two questions. So your question first, femme Asian.
Femme half Asian.
Lipstick lesbian.
Sorry. So I think it does happen in the straight world, right? So like, for instance, girls will put on their profile, no guys shorter than 6 foot. The average man is like 5'10" or something. It is exclusionary. It's just that I think it's most pronounced, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to be it's most pronounced in the gay male community because, or in my personal opinion, because of this very transactional nature of like, there are no barriers. People just want to have sex, right? What kind of sex do you want to have? And in terms of your question about are celebrities not doing enough, yeah, I mean, obviously it would be ideal if like everybody came out and then there were a lot more role models. Yeah, I mean, like it would help a lot. What were you going to say, Riyadh?
I can't answer about what happens in the straight community because I just don't know, and I think it would be wrong for me to guess. So I don't know. I'm sorry. I have no answer for that.
He's
But,
so cut off in his gay bubble.
Yeah, you know, I'm loving it though. I am
Loving
loving it. Oh, it's good. Your question about the famous people and the sports people, I would never be angry at someone or judge someone for not coming out. Specifically, if they are in the limelight, I actually have more empathy for them and understand it more because, you know, not only is there the idea of them, you know, potentially losing their career. It's also that isolation from their peers. You know, that is a problem, but I don't blame the gay person for that. I blame society for that and their industry for that. You know, Stephen Byrne from RTE, he's doing a documentary. I think it's out next week about Premier League football and the fact that there are tons of gays playing football, but none of them are out. And why is that? And when they do come out, they've got to leave the sport. Or they don't have to, but they do. They're pushed out of the sport. Yeah, I don't blame them. I hope that in the near future, they're lifted up and they're celebrated and they're kept in their sport and they're awarded and they're made feel even more special than they are because of being so open.
Like this forum though, like when you start to talk about no fats, no femmes, and you get everybody talking about it, it, you know, hopefully creates a discussion where it starts to normalize, like, okay, that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Similar to sports personalities where
people do start taking those steps to come out and start speaking about it,
Oh yeah, well you see, it's like a domino effect, like with anything in the world. Once you have a role model, like say when Tom Daly came out, it's headline news everywhere, and then you started to see more people come out. You know, what's that guy? He was an American football player.
Don't know anything about football.
Michael Sam. Yeah, you know, it starts happening more and more. It's definitely not as fast as it needs to be, but it's getting there. The world changes slowly, unfortunately.
I just want to make sure we can get a few questions in. So where do we have the...
Hi.
Hi. So I've really enjoyed the conversation today. I think it's really, really good. I would actually like to add something to what, I'm sorry, Femme Asian or Femme half Asian said. So apologies for naming that. I thought it was really interesting how you brought up the hierarchy of race privilege within your documentary. And I used to live in Japan, and one of the things that I found is there was never anyone that said no white people, ever. I think white people or white privilege permeates nearly everything, especially in the gay world. So I have a vague story that I'm half Greek and I pass as white very, very easily because I'm very white. But at the same time, if I said that to someone on any kind of gay app, I would possibly get like a 20% ratio of saying, I'm sorry, I don't fuck ethnics. So it's one of those things that I think taking in the idea of race hierarchy is a really, really good point to walk away with.
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, look, my name is Riyadh Khalif. You know, you can't get more foreign than that. And a lot of the time what I get online is, but you look so white. How, why? They're so intrigued by it. And then, you know, they might invest in going on a date or meet me in person. And it's so funny because when I meet them and they hear my voice and they hear that I don't sound ethnic, whatever the fuck that is, you see their eyes light up. It's like they're, oh, well, thank God for that. I can chat to them, I don't have to speak slower and louder. And it's like, you know, feck off. It happens over and over and over again. So when I see that happen, it's kind of like, you know, it frightens me for people that are more ethnic, you know, if that makes sense. But like, this is a very, very quick story. In the documentary, I interviewed this Malaysian man. He lives in Sydney, and he calls himself a potato queen. Now, I thought that meant he loves Irish lads. No. It means... I was like, I'm in! It means that he will only date white men and never anyone else. So we had this Skype conversation. He's quite a delightful man. And I said, why? And he said, literally said, the white race is superior to all other races. Asians are second class. I was like, what? Why? And he started talking about who landed on the moon first, who did this, who did that. Ridiculous stuff that he just made up in his head. And I just said, you know, you sound a bit like a Nazi. And then, you know, he got offended, but...
Poor guy.
God, this just doesn't happen on
But this is what's very terrifying about the situation is not only do they identify as people that only want one race, but they've now got a name for themselves. They've got a community. This guy's a published author. It's called The Secret Life of a Potato Queen. So, like, what publishing outlet made that book and said, yeah, we're going to do it? It's like, so we really have to work hard and not let this happen. Because it's moving in a very scary direction.
Right. Any more? Over there, we have someone.
I'll throw it to you. Sorry, I'll try in a second.
Oh, sorry, you have.
Sorry, the no fat, no femmes thing. I kind of missed the whole app thing. I was kind of settled down for that. But in my kind of, when I was out with straight talking, it's like everyone's kind of mad and straight talking. And there seems to be something in every generation. I know there was like, when Stonewall happened, nobody wanted to acknowledge that drag queens and all were there. And is there something, what is it in the gay male community that we're just never happy? We're always kind of, it just seems to be every generation. It's not changing. It just keeps kind of getting passing on. And it is interesting to hear from the lesbian community. I do have lesbian friends, but it's different. But, like, why are we're always insecure, we're always kind of, this is always seems to be the safety thing to go back to. Like, why do you think that is? Like, it's not changing. It hasn't changed.
Are you just saying it's going on to different platforms? Are you going to add to it, Jean?
Sure.
Oh, that was the most masculine.
You ruined it, Ross.
I work in an LGBT organisation here in Ireland, and for when I was coming here tonight, I was trying to look into kind of, we always talk about no fats, no femmes. There's always a fad in the LGBT community of something is not acceptable, so you can other the other. It's actually because we, as an LGBT organisation, as a community, are minoritized. We desperately want to make somebody else feel worse than us.
Like take the power
This
back.
is it.
So we do it kind of on this unconscious level, and it comes out as no fats, no femmes, so that I can stand up and say, yeah, I might be gay, fuck you, because you're fat and gay. And what we're doing is we're pushing that kind of minoritized, stigmatized, we're pushing it onto somebody else. So it's never, we change our words, we change what the fat or the femme will be something in a year's time. But it's always the same thing of passing on that minoritizing somebody, making somebody else feel worse than us because we just want to feel some kind of strength or some kind of
that completely makes
betterness.
sense.
But that's where the whole, the sassy queen thing comes from. It's like, what? Chill out. Everything's fine. Like, I met a guy in a club in London last week, and I said, hello, how are you? In the smoking area. And he goes, I was like, excuse me? And his friends were lovely, but he was a dickhead. And then I like you, I want to give him benefit of the doubt, and I think everyone has good in them. And I said, are you having a tough day? And then what happens is, do this. It's fascinating. If you treat a nasty person so nicely that they can't help but think about why they were mean, then they flip. They
Oh my God,
change.
you should do so well in the lesbian community.
Would I? I'm terrified. But
We've got limited time left. Have we got any question from any women in the audience?
Yeah. No. Any female
Come
question?
on, girls, keep the side up.
Okay, so I'm straight, and this is all like something that I'm not very aware of. So bear with me.
welcome to our community.
Come on, us. Get on her,
This is a good experience. So I was wondering if the kind of aggression and just the pure like putting everything out there and not like taking any apologies or not taking any hostages is maybe part of the fact that, and I may be wrong, but for example, if you're a gay man and you're just out in society normally and you see a guy you like and you're like, oh, hi, would you like to go out? And the guy's straight and he might punch you in the face or whatever. So then you kind of have to be in a little group where it's safe, and then it kind of takes away any barriers. So if society was more accepting, where it wouldn't matter which sexuality anyone was, and so if a lady came up to me and wanted to go out with me, I'd just be like, oh, well, maybe that's not my thing. And if it was the same with being guys, then maybe it would be less aggressive when you knew it was safe. I don't know.
So that comes back to the point that Ross was saying, that we do it because we're a minority and, we're marginalised and all that kind of things. And it's a response to insecurity. And it comes back to what I was saying earlier of, in school, like when our confidence is knocked. So, yeah, I think my personal opinion is you're absolutely right that if it was normalised and we weren't segregating ourselves away in gay clubs at gay nights and, all this kind of stuff, then it wouldn't be this stigma where we had to release this kind of stuff. But then again, devil's advocate, I genuinely believe that society, as is with the whole male-to-male thing, is just more transactional.
You express that much better than me. Thank you.
Okay, guys.
There's one more up there. You can take one more.
This guy's well up. Go on, spectacles.
Can you?
Okay,
One
just
more,
one
no
last
more.
one, then we're going to have to call it a day before security kicks us out.
Wait, there's no wine after?
Oh, we're all going to the George after.
Oh, okay. Who's going to the George?
We are going to the
Everyone.
George, by the way, just to let you know.
The George. So, more so to what you were saying, Riyadh, about the sassy queen. Do you think that maybe that comes from the no fats, no femmes? That it's more of a, okay, fuck it. Everyone's against me. That I'm going to actually hurt them before they get to me. I'll be like, okay.
Yeah, it's a self-preservation.
Yeah, it's more of a protection.
So it's generally people that have, in my opinion, from what I've experienced, because I've experienced a lot of it, especially in London, it's gays that have been hurt.
Yeah.
Potentially by family, by their co-workers. Just in life, they felt a little bit pushed out. And even in a social situation where everything's meant to be happy and, you're having a few drinks and you're just relaxing, they still have this wall. So that's why I don't get angry at them face to face when they're being sassy and mean, because I remember I was bullied heavily in school, and I wouldn't say I bullied someone, but I was mean. I was mean back to other people because I then had this baggage that they put on me, and I had to offload. So maybe I went home and I was a dickhead to my parents.
Yeah, it's sort of a lash out.
Yeah,
at other
yeah.
people,
So I think now the sassy queen thing has become fashionable, you know, with like RuPaul's Drag Race, and I think it's great and it's funny when it's yes, queen, when it's channeled.
Yes.
When it's channeled correctly, you know what I mean? If it's comedy or if it's in the right place, but if it's malicious, that's where it changes into something that I don't like.
Guys, the four of you are awesome. Round of applause.
Thank you. Okay, guys, that is the perfect place to call it a wrap. Please give it up to my wonderful panel, David, Viv, and Riyadh.
Please give it up for our host, Daniel.
Thank you. Okay, and before we leave, I would just like to invite you all to our fundraiser on the 8th of December, that is, for Shoutout in Oscar's Bar by Christchurch. And here to talk about the very important work of Shoutout is Bella Fitzpatrick, Managing Director.
Hello? Hi. Is this on? Sorry, just have to bear with me. I was planning to get my words together, but then I was so enthralled by what you guys were saying. I was like, so I've written like one or two things here. As you might imagine from my attire, I have come from another event.
Yes, queen, yeah.
This is not how I rock it on a Thursday normally. And I have to say, being in Google at like a tech event in like formal fucking black tie is like going to school naked. It's like similar. Like anxiety. Like, guys, I'm actually cool. I'm not narc. So I'm the managing director of Shout Out, and we're a voluntary organisation which delivers workshops in schools that tackle homophobic and transphobic bullying. So if I can just give you an idea of what that's like, if you could all bear with me. Everybody close your eyes. Okay, go back in time. You're 15. Get super insecure. Get kind of horny. Put yourself in your school. Imagine your mates. Imagine what the school smells like. And go into a classroom. And imagine someone is like, hey, my name's Bella. I'm from Shout Out. I'm bisexual. Let me explain to you what all the letters in LGBT, Q, I, A, A, P, etc. mean. Let me explain to you how to be sound if someone comes out. Let me explain to you all the resources available for you in case you're struggling. Let me explain to you how to introduce your pronouns. Let me explain to you how your school can help you if you want to transition. Now open your eyes. If that didn't have a massive impact or wouldn't have had a massive impact on you, you're very, very lucky. So that's what we do. We just basically go in and we train allies and we teach people how to be like really, really sound. And that's it. So it's so simple. And some of the things, I've totally missed all your names. The very pretty lady said, that your confidence is formed in your formative years. And that when you come out very young, people aren't as accepting, where if you come out kind of later, maybe it's a little bit easier. But I came out at 9. And my mom was like, you learned a new word. Let me ignore this. I know, she was great. So I think that's so true. So we don't want young LGBT people finding out about finding their community through these apps as deadly as they are. We really want them finding out by someone coming into the school and saying, hey, so if this is still a thing for you, go to Tenny, go to Belong To, chat to us, go to Gay Switchboard, and now you've seen me and I survived school, it gets better. Woo! So, yeah. So just to wrap up, because I have to go back to my black tie event. we need your money. So we're having a fundraiser on the 8th of December in Oscar's Bar, kindly hosted by InterTech. So why do we need your money? Because you might think, well, yeah, that would have been amazing for me when I was 15, but things have changed. Like, no. They have in one way, but the community, the young community are hurting. They're hurting because of what's happening globally to their community that they have no power over. They're hurting because if they come out and they are a sassy bitch, that they're letting down the community. And it's like, oh, I'm 15. I'm not like responsible for everybody else being a bigot. The only people who are responsible for being bigots is bigots, you know? And so they're reeling with all of this. And because of the marriage equality referendum, because of the no side, and because of the yes side, they're hurting. Because we didn't expand people's tolerance as much as we like to think. We told them we fit into what you already tolerate. And we snuck in. And we've excluded so much of the community in that. Because you don't have to be LGBT to get LGBT bullied. You don't have to be LGBT to be bullied in an LGBT fashion. You just have to not fit into gender norms. So let's tell all the 15-year-olds and let them fill the offices and let them never have to say, no fats, no femmes. Thank you.
Oh.
What a beauty.
Yeah, guys, please come along on the 8th of December and give generously. And apologies to anyone who didn't get to ask a question but wanted to, but we're going to carry on the conversation now upstairs in the George. Please join us for a drink or five. And I would like to thank Google for hosting us, and to Zalando, LinkedIn, and Airbnb for supporting us, and all our volunteers for helping us. And finally, thank you all for coming and joining us in this discussion. Good night.